Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the second episode of the Habita Dialogues. Today, I'm joined by the wonderful Jayne Connery, who I'm going to introduce you to in just a second. As a reminder, my name is Katrina Douglas, CEO of Ox Labs. And for those of you who aren't quite sure what the Habita Dialogues is all about, just to give you a brief overview. So the show is powered by Ox Labs, which is the company that provides in-home wellness monitoring system to safeguard the elderly. And I host this show once a month with wonderful guests. And what we do, it's all about exploring the lived experiences of professionals caught in the complex intersection of work, taking care of family, and looking after elderly loved ones. We often call these the sandwich generation. Many of you can relate. You have children at home, you have full-time jobs, and you have an aging parent that you need to take care of. And I personally don't think we talk enough about your needs and how to support you. So that is what this is all about, really unfiltered conversations to really just raise awareness. So my guest today is the wonderful Jayne Connery. And she is the founder and director of the Care Campaign for the Vulnerable, CCFTV, a national nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting safety and transparency in UK care homes. Vital work. So CCFTV's primary focus is advocating for the use of consent-based, choice-led safety monitoring in care homes with an emphasis on care for people living with dementia. So thank you for joining me today, Jayne. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Katrina. It's lovely to be on your second show.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because when we met, we were on a round table together. And I think what you said just immediately resonated. And we had a quick chat afterwards and connected afterwards. So a year later, it's so great that we're here and we're having this conversation because it's so necessary.
It is, and thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So let's get into it, Jayne. So, can you share your journey from being a family carer to founding CCFTV? I just want to hear your story. How did we get here?
Oh gosh, I'm going to have to condense it for the hour that we have. But it was something that was that the Care Campaign for the Vulnerable was founded pretty much early on
Yeah.
when my mother was diagnosed with vascular dementia.
Mm,
And I didn't really know what vascular dementia was, believe it or not, back then. And we're talking about 13, 14 years ago.
mm,
And it was all very new world to me. So as a family, I won't go into finer detail, but we decided that mum needed to go into care. And it was a
mm,
very difficult decision for our family. Our culture being Irish, we
yeah.
were very much family orientated.
Mm,
So none of us were really in a position to bring mum home
mm,
at that stage. She lived on her own with my now late father.
mm,
So it was a very concerning time, but literally on her going into her first care home, there were very serious issues pretty much early on. And I had questioned
yeah.
very innocently,
Mm,
where was the technology, the
yeah.
safety monitoring
Yeah.
technology, first of all, in the communal area, where falls were happening, where
Mm,
resident on resident incidents were happening.
yeah.
And it was very much, again, the time was 13 years ago. Oh no, never. We would never have cameras in our care
Wow.
homes. So that was the catalyst.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was working for an airline.
Mm,
So I was as far removed from care as one could get.
yeah.
But it wasn't, and I use this terminology, it was a light bulb moment. And I could not believe it.
Mm,
I could not believe that a facility that housed the most vulnerable citizens and carers that were put in sometimes very worrying situations in their workplace were not protected.
Mm.
And it was simple as that. And
Mm.
I pretty much set up CCFTV in my box bedroom.
Wow. Wow. So, how did you begin the process? Because often I think many people watching this will be able to relate. And I think that's why decisions often are so difficult, because this is like your worst fear, especially, I guess, Irish culture is quite similar to Caribbean culture in that sense. Like, like that is such a huge decision, because really, and the guilt that surrounds it. So, I can only imagine to then have trusted and painstakingly chosen the best care provider only to have this happen. And so often we have these frustrations and we feel helpless. But I think what is so inspiring is that even though you didn't have a background in setting up a charity, setting up a business, you were so compelled that you thought, actually, we have to put a stop to this. So, what was the process of setting it up? Where did you even start?
Gosh, Katrina, that is that is a question. I mean, I never had it in my head when I was sitting in my box bedroom, because
Mhm.
at that stage, after 3.5, 4 years, I took mum
Mm.
home. She'd been in 3 care homes,
Wow.
where in one she was abused.
Wow.
That was sort of settled, and investigations. The second one I placed in a hidden camera because my trust had quite rightly erased.
Yeah.
And she was evicted because
Wow.
I put in a hidden camera. And the third one, there were issues that was accepted by management.
Okay.
So it was a moment. I consulted with my family,
Mhm.
and I said, I'm bringing mum home.
Yeah.
And I only had a 1 bed flat.
Wow.
So I had to get a 2 bedroom house.
Wow.
I didn't have lasting power of attorney.
Wow.
So it was an uphill battle, but we had a best interest meeting, and my 86-year-old father attended,
Mm.
and we all agreed that home was best for
Yeah.
mum at that stage.
Yeah.
um I have to add, and I do want to add, that we met some incredible care staff,
Mm.
managers
Mm.
along the way.
Yeah.
Truly amazing. In fact, many follow care campaign today, and I'm truly grateful for the care and love they showed my mother.
Yeah.
But it really wasn't. It really wasn't. Apart from a couple of rogue, which was very sad. Um, it was more about the culture in care, how there
Yeah.
was no independent overview.
Yeah.
So bringing her home, for me, I I never had a choice.
Yeah.
When I
Yeah.
asked to put
Yeah.
safety monitoring in my mother's second care home, and I was very open, very
Mhm.
transparent. I said,
Mhm.
"Can I have a safety monitoring device in my mum's room, so that I can just keep an eye on her and work with
Yeah.
you if
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
falls or
Yeah.
anything?" And it was a blatant no.
Wow.
So I sort of left it at that. But unfortunately, my trust had broken down from the
Yeah.
first home where my mother was physically abused.
Mhm.
So instead of sort of sitting me down and talking to me and giving
Yeah.
me other reassurances, um, I I put in a hidden camera.
Yeah.
So that there was a lot going on,
Yeah.
and far too much to explain
Yeah.
on your podcast
Yeah.
today. But suffice to say, I decided that this was a huge issue,
Yeah.
and I wanted to try and make a small difference.
Yeah. And you've made a huge difference, Jane, which we'll continue to go into. But before we move on, can you explain what you mean by lasting power of attorney for those who are watching who may not understand?
Yes, lasting power of attorney, and I do a lot of this with Care Campaign for
Yeah.
the Vulnerable, supporting families. It's a legal requirement, legal power, where if you want to have a legal requirement over the care of your loved one. So
Yeah.
you're basically their voice,
Yeah.
and you're concerns and anything that you want to sort of put forward about the care, you have a legal right to do
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Obviously, working in the best interest,
Yes.
of course,
Of course. Yeah.
of your loved one. I never had that legal power. I
Okay.
never had lasting power. I was just next of kin.
Okay.
I called myself, which gave me a little bit of clout. I
Mm.
called myself my mother's care partner, which
Okay.
I was. I
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
for me sort of worked, but I don't recommend that to families today. I say we should all be talking about lasting power of attorney on health and welfare,
Yeah.
but before we need it.
Yes.
This should be discussed in our early 30s,
Yes.
and discussed with your parents when they're in a position to. And nobody likes to talk about it,
Mhm.
Katrina. Nobody likes to talk about frailty or vulnerability, but I wish I had.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that is really useful information. And that leads me on to a question about how you work with, generally speaking, um, care organizations, and what support do you provide? What does CCFTV actually do, both on the organizational side of things and also the carer side of things?
Yeah, we're under an umbrella, really. I say we're under an umbrella, and at the top is the advocating for independent choice led cameras, safety monitoring, I like to call
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
And that is what I work at, that is
mm,
what I campaign for.
yeah,
But okay, I do so much more. I
yeah,
mean, I can go to coroner court, sit with families. I go into sometimes Crown courts with families that have
mm,
raised sort of a illegality around the abuse or neglect of
yes,
loved ones. I go into best interest meetings,
mm,
crisis meetings. I even go into CHC, NHS funding decisions, funding meetings. So I do an awful lot. So families contact me as well.
okay,
And they tend to contact me when they've really at the end of their tether
yeah,
and they've got nowhere else to go. And
mm,
I go in as a complete independent.
okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. That makes sense. And I'm sure people watching this are going to be relieved to know that an organization like yours exists, because one of the questions is, where do you turn? These are things that outside of the care sector aren't really spoken about. Wonderful. Okay. So in terms of technology, so you've been a strong advocate, as you say, for using ethical monitoring, such as CCTV or ambient sensors, to protect both residents and staff. And I think that's an important point, residents and staff. And before we go on and I finish the question, can you talk to me about why it's important to protect both?
Oh gosh, it's as
Yeah,
vital to protect
yeah.
staff as it is to protect the vulnerable,
Mm,
because they're both vulnerable. And
yeah,
I've seen that firsthand personally and professionally. Um, I have carers come to me that are often accused of wrongdoing,
yeah.
and they say they are innocent and that there is no overview, no oversight
Mm,
to protect them. Now, when we look at the vulnerable person, and my mother had quite complex dementia, um, sometimes people with dementia often communicate in other ways. So, they might lash out
mm,
or they might respond to their environment. And sometimes, if you're a carer, you can get caught up in that.
yeah.
So, I think, we've had carers come to us that they've been suspended for a
Mm,
very long period of time while an investigation in the home has gone on.
mhm.
Now, that carer will come back completely exonerated through
Yeah.
only the investigation process, no visual monitoring to actually 100% confirm that.
Mm,
So they often come back and say, well, the suspicion is still on me
yeah,
from my peers, from my
yeah,
colleagues. They
yeah,
feel it.
yeah.
Um, and they say, this has put me off care
Mm,
because I need to be protected. And I think the more those stories came into me, because initially I was just supporting families,
yeah,
but then after about 2 years, we were getting carers come in and say, we want to be protected as well.
yeah.
And I'm actually quite humbled by that, because I
Mm,
saw it myself, because my mother would often say, oh, I was treated poorly last night,
mm,
or that carer doesn't like me.
mm.
They don't, that carer talks not very nice to me.
Yeah.
But, I could see that there was no proof
Yes.
either or. They were lovely to me.
Yes.
Um, so it was horrible. It was
Mm,
actually horrible to have that when you walked into a care home.
yeah.
And I think unless you've lived it, Katrina, unless you've lived that kind of feeling, you really do need to understand how we have to protect our care staff as
Yeah.
well.
100%. And I agree. So my grandfather, he lived independently till he was 100. And towards the end, he did have dementia, vascular dementia, same as your mother. And it was this, he had a wonderful carer. So I think as much as there are issues, I think it's important to have nuance in the conversation, say that there are wonderful carers. And
Yes.
the lady that looked after my grandfather, the way she advocated for him was so wonderful. So I can only imagine if you are a carer and actually you are doing this because this is a life's vocation and you genuinely love this elderly person, but because of their dementia, and I saw it in my granddad sometimes, they just sometimes don't. And of course, the beauty of what you're doing is that you actually have proof. So if even if you are concerned, you have that. But I say that to say, I think it is an important to point to raise. My mother also owns a care company with independent carers, and there are some wonderful carers about. So I think it's great that you work on both sides, so you see both sides and support both sides.
Absolutely. And I think this isn't about whether carers are good or carers are
Mhm.
bad. I
Yeah,
think, in an industry like the care sector,
yeah,
um, we're dealing with people that are placed under a lot of pressure.
yeah.
We're placed under carers that are limitedly supported.
Mhm.
Um, and we're working with the sector, and I've grown to love the sector. I
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I was a very upset daughter 13 years ago,
Mhm.
with not much trust.
Yeah,
But thankfully, I have seen the other side,
yeah.
and I've been very privileged. I say I feel very privileged to be able to see it, and I've fallen in love with the sector,
Mhm.
and I've seen some incredible advocates and professionals working within it,
Yeah.
and I say that genuinely. But we mustn't close our eyes.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. So, Jane, how do you balance safety and privacy? How, because I think that is a conundrum because you want visibility, but also you don't want to violate privacy.
Absolutely
So
not.
how do you manage that?
No, privacy is number one.
Yeah,
I certainly know if I was in a care home, and I can say that now with full capacity.
yeah.
It would be something that I would definitely want to have stringent protocols around. I
Mm.
would want safety monitoring
Yeah,
if
yeah,
as for a lot of families, in fact, all of them that come to me say, we do want cameras in our loved ones' care.
yeah,
But it is a subject that it's not black and white. We have to look at, if providers are going to say that we want cameras, they have to know that it's not about just sticking a camera up in a
yeah,
room.
yeah,
We have to understand that there's conversations that have to be had. Lasting power of attorney on health and well-being have to be consulted,
yeah,
and they have to agree,
yeah.
if that's what they want. And again, it's about choice led. So
Mm.
this isn't about everybody.
Yes.
If somebody doesn't have capacity, then their next of kin, their family member that
Yeah.
has their best interest at heart, a conversation is had with the provider.
Yeah.
So it's really about having a conversation. We don't agree with personal care,
Hmm.
although if audio wants to remain on, that's
Yeah.
normally what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
But it's not about 24-hour monitoring either.
Yes.
We support technology that does retrospective viewing. So
Okay.
if there is an incident, that can be looked over by one member or two members of senior members of
Okay.
executive
Yeah.
management with the company that monitors.
Okay.
So it's really stringent.
Good. Good.
The footage, everything is held very, very protectively.
Good.
So I would also advocate providers to look at sort of expert companies
Mm,
that do monitoring and reporting as well on
yeah.
incidents. But in general, it's about a general overview of the culture in the
Yeah.
home, of how carers are supported in the home. And when we work with providers, it is a game changer.
I can imagine. I can imagine. So systems like our Habita, they aim to detect early changes in daily routines and support proactive well-being monitoring, like you're saying. So how do you see technology like this complementing traditional care practices?
Oh, it's going to change the sector.
Mm.
And it should. I'm not the most technically minded lady in the world. I have enough knowledge and I learn every day.
Yeah,
That's very important.
yeah,
You never go away from this job thinking, I've learned everything.
mm,
I'll learn it from the day I stop.
yeah,
But technology, particularly AI, particularly
yes,
technology, I've seen some incredible things
mm,
that technology experts are coming to me with, startup companies,
mm,
companies that are starting out, and yourself. I see the
yeah.
great work that Oxy Labs are doing.
Thank
Um,
you.
Honestly, I don't just say that, and it is phenomenal. And
Mm,
I think any technology that can safeguard, because we've got to, people say, well, it's surveillance. I see it as safeguarding.
yes,
So
yes.
any technology that safeguards the vulnerable,
Hmm.
bring it on.
Yes, yes,
And I
I
think
agree.
if you've got companies behind that are ethical, that are
Yes,
doing it for the right
yes,
reasons,
yes,
then I say this is the way to go in care.
yeah.
I'm very excited about technology that's coming in,
Yeah, yeah,
particularly as my passion and yours is
yes,
dementia care.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm doing Habita Dialogues, Jane, because this is an industry where people have to know the people behind the companies because ethics matter, your value systems matter. Because anyone can create great technology, but with AI and the data you are going to be responsible for, you have to have an ethical and moral compass that goes beyond just what the law requires of you when you're
Oh,
dealing with families and vulnerable adults. So I couldn't agree with you more.
yeah, spot
Yeah,
on,
yeah,
Katrina,
yeah.
absolutely.
So, from your experience, Jane, what do caregivers need most in terms of knowledge, tools, and systems to effectively support their aging loved ones?
Well, I think if we're looking at home care, we're looking for sort of people that are looking after their loved ones at
Yeah,
home,
yeah,
then I think technology is as important as the sector,
yeah.
as care homes or care facilities. In my own mother's care, I had technology, I had safety
Mm,
monitoring that
yeah.
obviously carers were in agreement with. That was the
Mm,
first thing, and it was there for them as well. But I do think that I also think that technology is no good, and I will say this, if the training isn't there,
yes,
because one
yes,
counteracts the other.
yes.
So I think what we need, and I write about and talk about this a lot, is sometimes we overlook complex dementia and complex
Mhm.
ailments and conditions. And I think we need a real robust, whether that be training tools from technology,
Yeah,
which is out there, but we certainly do need to up that
yes,
the complex training
yes,
for and home care as well
yeah,
for people. I mean, when I was caring for my mother, I was pretty much a nurse, a carer. I
Mm,
was, I was coming in, I was caring for her 24/7,
wow.
even though she had carers.
Yeah.
And it was so overwhelming, Katrina. It was so overwhelming. And if I had, the knowledge I have now, it would have been just such a different ball game for me.
Yeah. So what advice would you give? Because I can only imagine how overwhelming that was for you. Um, and there's some people watching this live that have full-time jobs and their employers may not even know they have this type of pressure at home. What advice would you give them on how to navigate that? Yeah, because did were you working at the time? How did you manage life and like, yeah, how did you do it? And what advice would you give others doing that now?
Do you know, that's a really good question, and one I haven't regularly been asked,
Mm,
and it's really important.
mm,
I was working for an airline,
mm,
a very well-known airline, and I was more times out going to my mother, caring for my mother than I was in. Carers would call me, "We
wow.
need you home. Mum's fallen. Mum's not eating. Mum's got a pain. Mum's been sick." I spent more time out of my job than I spent in. The fact was, I had a very, very understanding manager.
Mm,
But in the end, I went from full time to 4 hours. And in the end, I gave up my job.
wow.
So I think, I think you have to have employers
Mm,
that understand the same as childcare.
yeah,
I don't see much difference
yeah.
when you're looking after a vulnerable elderly person than you do with a toddler.
100%. And I saw a statistic, Jane, the other day that said there are actually more women of a certain age that looking after their adults than there are than children. And so another thing we want to raise awareness for is employer support programs, because you have them for all sorts of things, but I don't think I've ever seen any program for people that are caring for elderly loved ones. And I don't know if that's an awareness thing within organizations. I don't know what it is, but the fact that there is literally zero support for these, many of them don't even consider themselves carers, because it, as far as they're concerned, they're just looking after their loved ones, but they're saving the NHS thousands. It's
Millions,
essentially a
millions. Yeah,
millions, yes, millions.
yeah.
And they don't recognize themselves, much less. So yeah, yeah,
No, I mean, Katrina, again, you've obviously know your caring, and you again absolutely correct. I think that's a superb thing you've said about sort of employers and having sort of like tools like you have, sort of support
yeah,
for people with children. I mean, when my mum was first put into a care home, it was quite traumatizing. Now some people would say, well, why was it traumatizing? You're just putting your mum into a care home. I actually got that from people I
wow,
knew, friends
wow,
that I knew. Well, yeah, don't worry, she's in a care home now, that's fine. Carry on with your life, go traveling, do it.
wow,
I think until you've lived it, until you've experienced it, putting your loved one in the trust of strangers,
mm,
particularly if you're close,
yeah,
if you're a close family, is probably one of the most scariest things you can do.
is,
And I recognize that now with families that come to me and say, oh, Jane, this I feel so scared, I'm scared
yeah,
to leave them. Now some people might think, well, that's a bit over the top, but I don't.
no, it
Because
isn't,
it
it is,
isn't. And I think what a lot of these people are in jobs. A
mm,
lot, I mean, they're school teachers,
yeah,
policemen,
yeah,
policewomen.
Yeah.
I've supported, people that have been CEOs
Yeah.
who have loved ones
Yeah.
and they are at melting point, and
Literally.
they say, I never thought it was going to be so difficult.
Hmm.
Um, and then if the care isn't going right, they are absolutely, the pressure is like a
Yeah.
pressure pot.
Yeah.
And I think we need something, whether it be government led, whether it be independently led, we
Yeah.
certainly need the employers to understand that people, they're not there just looking after children, which is hugely, hugely a priority,
Mm.
but also their elderly relatives.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%. And I think with an aging population, um, m- more more of us are going to be in that situation ourselves,
Yeah.
to be honest. And I think there needs to be some systematic change. Which leads me on to my next question. In your view, what systematic changes, whether in CQC oversight, government policy, or technology adoption, are needed to improve outcomes for vulnerable adults? And for those that may not know who CQC are, can you just explain, Jayne?
Well, the Care Quality Commission
Yeah,
are the regulator for care homes, hospitals. Our Care Campaign for the Vulnerable has had a lot of, should we say, dealings with the Care
yeah,
Quality Commission, and it's a regulator that, at the moment, um, Care Campaign for the Vulnerable are trying to engage, with them to ascertain and to understand where they stand
mm,
with providers that want to, be forward thinking and
yeah,
adopt this technology. And we've done a lot. We've written to Keir Starmer. We've written to
mm,
all the prime ministers, Rishi Sunak, West Streeting, Stephen Kinnock.
mm,
We've MP. I've written to all of them, and I'm hugely disappointed that we are still in this place where what we're hearing at Care Campaign is, well, this is our stance. Providers can implement it. Um, Hidden cameras, if families feel that they need to put in a hidden camera, here are the regulate. Here's
mm.
how they do it. We need a far better, get off the fence, to
Yeah,
put it
yeah,
bluntly,
yeah,
from the Care Quality Commission, to accept that if providers want to implement this responsibly, with
yes,
families' consent, they should be allowed to, with absolutely no fallback on that provider during an inspection process. Because what's really disappointing, and I won't name names,
mm,
is that, we have heard that providers have been given, a downgrade for having
mm,
safety monitoring in their care
mm,
home.
mm.
Um, and this is something that I find is abhorrent
Yeah,
and will put vulnerable people and carers at risk.
yeah,
And if we've got providers and carers and families that want it, then the CQC should accept that that is best practice.
yeah,
And we're currently in the process, Katrina, of working, and I'm writing to the Care Quality Commission.
yeah.
um, they have been, labelled previously, not fit for purpose.
Okay.
I'd like to see that I could be a lot more positive about them,
Mm,
if they would just engage with us.
yeah, yeah. Okay. No, important points there, Jayne. So finally, what advice would you give to someone who has an elderly relative in a care home and wants to advocate for them? How can they be a voice? How can they advocate for their aging loved ones? And they may not yet be in a care facility. They may just be working with care providers independently, but just generally speaking, how can we advocate better for our elderly and vulnerable adults?
Well, I can say with some confidence now that when I started out advocating, I had a lot to learn. I
Mm,
think knowledge is power. It's a well
yeah,
known saying.
yeah,
Knowledge is power in the sector. Get to know get to know what advocacy really is,
yeah,
and understand how you communicate,
yeah,
because that is vital.
yeah.
Um, families come in, they're full of emotion. They
Mm,
may not always effectively communicate right. That's
yeah,
understandable, by the
yeah,
way.
yeah,
But one of the roles that I do, and I'm quite, I'm quite pleased that I can do this, is from my mistakes that I made, trying to communicate with the provider, because
yeah.
I was just a daughter that wanted the right care, the right sort of
Mm,
transparency around her care. I do explain and mentor families on
okay,
how to communicate effectively.
okay.
So I do quite a bit of that at Care Campaign when families come to me, and with great results.
Mm,
So
wonderful.
I think to put, I mean, I could go on all day about how to advocate, but I think if you do your homework, learn about advocacy, what's your rights, learn about your rights, and learn about how the sector operates,
Yeah, yeah,
because that's really important.
yeah,
And that's something I'm quite proud of at CCFTV, that we have brought some fantastic outcomes for families only because we've taught them how to advocate
yeah.
properly.
Fantastic. So, lastly, really lastly, Jayne, what would you like the legacy for CCFTV to be?
Oh, that's lovely.
Mm,
I think the legacy I'd like to bring is that if family, and this is something that I really would like families to say more of. When families come to me, I would love the legacy of, that the sector is listening.
yeah, yeah,
And I think if we can, and I do this with the providers, with the organisations that I work with, I'm very proud to work with. If we can all sort of say we're listening,
yeah,
and they're listening to us,
yeah,
I think that's a great legacy.
yeah. It
And
is.
and I would like to, obviously, goes
Mm,
without saying, have choice-led safety monitoring in every single UK care home where choice prevails.
yeah.
So yes, so there's two. I've done two for you.
No, wonderful. And we're cheering you on, Jayne. It's great to see the work that you're doing in the industry. An absolute pleasure to talk to you. I knew it would be a great conversation, and it has absolutely been. So thank you for your time. And for those that want to connect with you, how can they connect with you?
Well, we've got the website
Yeah.
carecampaignforthevulnerable.com. Go on
Mhm,
that. But we're
mhm.
all over social media. LinkedIn,
Yeah.
very big. So come and
Yeah.
join me, Jayne Connery, at LinkedIn, or Facebook at Jayne Connery, or Care Campaign for the Vulnerable.
Fantastic. Well, thank you to those of you that are watching live or will watch the replay. If you do actually have any questions, if you are joining live, feel free to pop them in the comments. If you are watching the replay, still pop them in the comments, because I always go back and check. And if there's any for Jayne, I will reach out to her and pass them on as well. So do feel free to connect with Jayne, connect with us here at Ox Labs. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, connect with us on our LinkedIn page, Ox Labs. And at the top, there's a post about signing up for our mailing list. So do please sign up as well. We've got so much that we want to do. And yeah, it will be great to have you in our community. So thank you for watching once again. Jayne, thank you for your time. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and we will absolutely speak soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Katrina. And thank you to Ox Labs as well.
Thank you. All right, everybody. See you in the next episode of Habita Dialogues, and have a wonderful rest of the week. Bye bye.